My first job was a sales assistant at a brokerage firm. So I went through the process, I got my broker's license, and I worked. However, I'm just a hippie at heart. I'm a people lover. So I entered that business because I wanted to help people gain financial freedom. And once I realized that it was a sales business, I knew that I was a fish out of water. I always did hair on the side from high school, maybe 15 years old on. And at that point, maybe 5 or 6 years into my career as a sales assistant, I decided to quit and go to cosmetology school. So I just walked away. I love the variety of natural hair, and I love people. So my love for people makes me want to help them love themselves. A lot of Black women in particular, when transitioning from chemically treated hair to natural hair, go through a very serious psychological and emotional time. It's a journey. And during that time, they have to accept and embrace what God gave them. This is the hair that grows out of your scalp, so that cannot be changed. So I enjoy helping people to love what they have. The majority of my clients are corporate, even the majority of the lock clients. And the key to corporate is professional grooming. It's being polished. And even locks can be polished. So that's definitely a misconception, and I've blown that one out of the water. Another misconception I had was that every natural style was Afrocentric, and that it was making a statement of, Pan-Africanism or Black power. And that was a misconception that I had in my early 20s. But as I began to embrace natural hair for myself as a lifestyle, I saw that it's really more about self-love and self-acceptance. My name is Jamila Sampson, and I am a natural hair care expert and lock specialist. And I have been natural for 16 years, and I love it.
The reason why I decided to go natural or to start my locks, I was hanging around a lot of Rastafarians at the time, and that lifestyle was very intriguing to me, and just learning more about just my roots in general. And that lifestyle really intrigued me to start my locks, and it was the best decision I ever made. I'm so excited and so happy about my journey. So that's my little bit of my lock story, or my natural story.
Awesome. Okay, I'll go next. I never thought I would go natural. I had perms, all throughout my life. And after I had my daughter, my hair shed. It shed horribly. And so I was still getting a perm, and my hair wouldn't grow in the back, And so my hairstylist, she was just like, your hair just won't grow in the back. And I was like, no, I'm not going to accept that it just won't grow. So what I decided to do, I switched hairstylists, and then I started to transition, but I didn't cut it all off. So basically I was just letting it grow out, and I was still getting straightened. So I was doing that. So, and my hair responded to that, so it started to grow. And I did that for years until probably 2016. I just noticed that my hair started thinning from all the pressing and getting it straightened. And I would do that every 2 weeks. At one point I was doing it every week, going to get it pressed. So I had short pieces, I had long pieces, and then I just said, I was like, I'm just gonna cut it off. I was like, my hair is not healthy. I don't like the way it looks anymore. It doesn't look good. And so I went to my hairdresser, and I was just like, just cut it off. And she kept saying, are you sure you want to do this? She's like, maybe we can fix it. And I was like, no, I said, I'm positive. So we cut it all off, and, but it was straightened. So she had pressed it out, and it was really pretty. And then after a week, I just washed it, and then I saw my natural curls, and I was like, my curls look great. I was like, why have I been doing this to myself? So I just decided to wear my hair like that. And the reaction I got it's been positive, clients, and then going back into the corporate environment at the firm I was working with, everybody was like, oh my gosh, I love your hair, you cut it. It's like, I like your curls, And of course people ask, well, why did you cut it? What made you decide to cut it off? And I was just like, my hair just wasn't healthy, and I just wanted to see what my natural hair looked like. And it's great, and it's just like, it's low maintenance, and I don't think I'll ever go back. Now, I'll change my hairstyle sometimes, and maybe I'll get straight up hat braids, things like that. But this is pretty much how I wear my hair on a consistent basis. Thank you so much.
Can we hear from Lise next?
Oh, absolutely. So, hi everyone, my name is Lise, and I guess my natural hair journey really started back in 2007. I was a sophomore in college, and I had been reading a lot of blogs. I don't know if you guys remember Naturality. Yeah. It was that site where women would go in and upload their photos, and I was so inspired by that, and I was just looking at all these women and their hair, and I was like, wait, I think I can do that. I think I can just, take that leap, because my mom used to perm my hair since I can remember, probably 5 or 6. I remember being in that tub. Yes, I remember being in the tub, my mom putting that perm, and your scalp just burning. So I knew, being in college, you're a little rebellious. So I went to a barbershop, a local barbershop, and I said, just cut it all off. And she said, are you sure? Because I had a lot of thick hair. And she was just like, okay, I'll do it. So I cut it off. And when I went to go see my parents, I think subsequently a few weeks later, they were not happy. They were not happy at all. And so subsequently I had to go back to the perm. I was just like, I don't want to upset my parents. I respect them, so I'm just going to wear my hair the way that they want me to wear my hair. And so I'd always kind of toyed with the idea of going back to having my natural hair, because I liked the way that it looked on me. But I was scared about my parents' approval. I wanted their approval so badly. So I fast forward to 2013. I was living in New York. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. And if you've ever been to New York, you can get your hair pressed for like $20, $15 easily.
Really?
Oh yes. Any shop, any corner, you can find someone who's willing to wash and blow dry your hair for $15. So I got into that, and that was a bad pattern. And I said, you know what? I have got to stop. So 2013, I stopped perming my hair, and I think it was around 2014, I had 2 friends of mine. They came over to my apartment. One of them took a scissors, another one had scissors, and we just started cutting. Wow. And that was it. That was the last time I ever relaxed my hair, was 2013, transitioned in 2014. And so as of right now, I've been working in corporate America. I work at a consulting firm. And so I think what has really helped me be successful in working and wearing my natural hair in the environment has been seeing other Black women do it. Because a lot of times people are saying, well, what about the culture? Go there and expect the culture. And I'm like, we bring the culture. We don't have to ask them how to bring it. We bring it. So that has been really helpful for me in working in these types of environments.
So my experience going back natural actually was decades ago. It's like it was college, freshman year of college, 92, 93. And I only had a relaxer for about 2 years, so my family throughout my life was pretty much pressing and curling. And then probably my sophomore year of high school, I got a relaxer for the first time. Luckily, I had been doing hair since I was a little girl, so most of the time I would braid my hair. And when I went to Howard freshman year, I had my braids in, and when I took my braids out, the relaxer and my natural hair started clumping together. And it was like clumping, and it was coming out. Now, backstory, I'm from Berkeley, California, and I had been raised kind of to, there's very much a pro-Black culture that I was raised in. I always knew that I was going to lock my hair because I was exposed to, reggae music. However, I wasn't expecting it to be at that moment when my hair was clumping together. So my initial reaction was I was actually, in tears because my hair was falling out. I was able to braid my hair, and then I was just like, okay, we're gonna do it now. We're gonna lock our hair. And so at the time, it was like the 92, 93 era. So kind of like in the video, it was during the hip hop movement. We had more brothers at the time that were actually locking their hair, like DOS effects and stuff like that. We didn't really have sisters that were locking their hair. But the time was a very receptive time in terms of with my peers with regards to accepting natural hair. Interesting enough, I didn't really experience the corporate experiences at that time because I was relatively young, but I was working retail. And interesting, I was denied a position by a black manager, whereas the white managers hired me.
Wow.
And then fast forward, I ended up having my locks when I moved to Atlanta, and after graduation and whatnot. It was like 2001. I was hired by a bank. Well, now I'm going to reveal. I won't reveal. Anyhow, when I got to the human resources, it was a sister who had an issue with my hair. My hair and the time nose ring. And luckily, though, the person who hired me from the bank, who was actually the VP over the particular division I was working for, was a black man. He said she has a degree from Howard University in finance, and she's going to come here and do the statistics. What does her hair have to do with what she's going to do, right? And so that was the first time. And interesting enough, I did see more patterns of the gatekeeping amongst us. And so, and I, at the same time, I had been doing natural hair by this time too. So I understood it though too. I understood that the concern wasn't just so much, it wasn't coming from a negative place per se, but it came from a particular conditioning we had about how we're supposed to present ourselves and what professional looks like.
Right.
So luckily in my youth, I didn't, I got to have my locks for a long time before I bumped up against the kind of, opposition to having the natural hair. And my family was receptive, so.
Have you all found that to be common? What Dr. Taura mentioned as this gatekeeping, because in my experience, I did get the most negative feedback from other black people in the corporate environment, and I was on a, I guess like an entry level, lower position. So I didn't necessarily need autonomy. So there weren't levels that I had to cross through. So I didn't really experience a lot of it, but the negative feedback I got was from my other African American peers. So I think this is something we should discuss, because I think it's a little shame that we place on each other about the concept of what beautiful looks like, what neat looks like, what groomed looks like, and how we should present ourselves to the others. So.
Okay, I was gonna say, for me, I got a lot of support because I think I came into the natural hair game so late. So most of the women, the black women attorneys I work with, they already have natural hair. Like in some states, some have locks, some have like the curly naturals, and the women change their hair, constantly. Now you do get some comments from our Caucasian counterparts. It was like, oh, you guys change your hair all the time, It's like how do you do that? Like, how do you go from long hair to short hair in a few days, And so then they want to know, we have to explain that process, because you can wear braids and then you can have your natural and then you can have a weave, whatever. But I didn't really have any problems like people commenting like negatively, because like I said, it's only been like 2 years for me. So yeah.
I think for me, it was because back when I was working in corporate, my locks just like 2-strand twists, so it didn't really look like much. But when it started to bud and look like locks more so, it was like the stereotype that they thought was associated with somebody that had locks. So it was automatically asking me questions about you smoking now? Like, it's just like, I'm like, really? And so they just automatically think that there's a certain lifestyle that comes along with it. So, and even if they were just doing it like jokingly, it was something that, that they were still thinking about, so I think that's the only, because all the black women that I worked with at the time had perm. And so they were just kind of like, they just didn't really, I think they understood why I did it, but they were just like why here? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept about gatekeeping, because I feel like right now, especially in my workplace, I can see sometimes the looks, sometimes it's not spoken, it's just the look someone can give you, and you're like, oh, you're not receptive to what's going on right now. And so I think in my workplace, I do still have some black colleagues, male and female, especially when I think about some of the women who still wear the weaves and the wigs. And so, coming in wearing the natural hair, it's just very like, okay, we'll allow you to do that, you know, for now. But I think what happens is that there is this idea of like, hey, there's not so many of us here, and this is how you choose to represent yourself. So I feel that struggle a lot. And sometimes I do feel like I do kneel to that. Sometimes if I'm out somewhere, if I'm going to a client, I'll maybe pull my hair back. I may not have it this big. I'll probably slick it down a little bit more. So I do feel like sometimes I do kind of kneel into that idea of like, okay, this is how we are supposed to present ourselves, because sometimes when we go into those places, we are the only representative available. And so I try to, you know, be conscious of that at times.
Have any of you been in a position to explain your hair to someone of another culture, and was that uncomfortable to you?
Yes, it wasn't uncomfortable. I thought it was funny. This older white man, he was looking my direction. He was like, "Those look fun," and I'm turning around. I'm turning around like, what is he talking about? And then he said, "Those are fun," and I was like, "My hair?" He was like, "Yeah." And at the time, I had my wrap lock in, so it was curly, and so he was just like, "Yeah, they look like crinkly fries," and I was just like, "How'd you get them that way?" And I really, we were at an event, and I just looked at him, and I just smiled, and I kind of walked away because I just didn't even know how to address it at that point, because I was just like, there had been some spirits exchanged, so I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna leave him alone and walk away. But it's just like those comments I just laugh now because I get them often. Yes, so it was interesting.
So when I made my transition, I was, like I said, I was in a brokerage firm, but I had been working there for several years, so I knew most of the people that were around me. So I think there was a level of comfort that they had asking me questions. So it wasn't offensive to me, right? You know, but I explained to them, like, okay, don't ever say that to another black person, right? But I'm going to answer your question. So I had that kind of rapport, right? And I think one of the most interesting things was the level of ignorance that is out there. So every time I would come in with a style, the question was, how did you get your hair like that? Well, does that hurt? I'm like, no. Oh, yeah, that hurts. It's separated and it's braided to my scalp. You know, my scalp is fine. It did not bleed, nothing. You know, so I actually explained and answered their questions. But I think one of the funniest experience I had was when two different coworkers, you know, one was a white male and one was a female. And they asked if they could touch my hair. And this is when it was in an afro. So I had my sunshine halo and my headband on. And they said, well, can I touch it? I was like, sure, that's fine. Right. You know, I already knew these people. So when they touched it, both of them jumped back. Like, it's so soft. That was the funniest it's hair. It's very curly, and it's hair. So I think I was glad that I had that level of comfort with them, because at least now they know, and maybe they'll share the wealth with some others. I thought that was interesting. That's funny. So what are your perspectives on the legislation that's beginning in our country? So far, California and New York have actually passed natural hair discrimination laws. I mean, specifically outlawing discrimination against people because of their hairstyle or their hair texture.
I think it's wonderful because, you know, in certain areas, you know, black people are still discriminated against for having their hair like locked or having a natural hairstyle. I mean, you think about the wrestler where they made him cut his locks, you know, so that still happens. So I'm hoping that, you know, other states will pick up that same legislation, because it does still happen. I think because we live in Atlanta, which is more progressive, it's more black people, and it's more black people in corporate America, it's more accepted. But if you go to like middle America or someone else, it may not be accepted.
Yeah, I've been really interested in that whole movement, the Crown Act specifically. So when I was doing my research, I realized that the Crown Act is heavily sponsored by Dove. which is a white-owned business. So I was kind of like, what is the relationship there? Why Dove? But regardless of that fact, I think it's really interesting to see that legislation move, and I see a lot of other municipalities and local. I think it was out in Maryland, Montgomery County over there was looking to pass a law in that particular county against hair discrimination, but I want to see what the precedents will look like. You know, if someone does come with a real, true allegation of hair discrimination, what is the real cost behind that? Will there be true action taken, or is it just something that's put in the law books and just passed over? So I'd like to see what that looks like.
And it's interesting too, because the thing is, it's like, so I think it was like maybe a year or so ago, the Alabama Appellate Court upheld that it was okay for an employer to discriminate based upon hairstyle. And so that was when everyone was like, oh, Supreme Court upholds that, hair discrimination. And it was a black woman who had her locks. She was hired, but then was told that she had to cut her locks off, and basically to secure the employment. And it's interesting. So it's interesting because one of the things that we know historically, that like with regards to hair discrimination, many of the cases that have come up have actually involved black women. So like with American Airlines, DC, and each time black women did not win. And part of the reason why is because, like, based upon the Civil Rights Act, that some of the cases that the characteristics that are, or the classes that are protected are considered like unmutable. So that's like race, gender, ability, age, and religion. And at one time, of course, sexuality wasn't protected. But the other thing is our hair is seen as mutable. Like basically the idea is that you can change it. And so what happened was, like with the, I think it was the American Airlines case, the idea was that the law was like you couldn't wear braids. There are grooming policies, you couldn't wear braids. And so this applied equally to black men and white women. And so at the time they were trying to argue, I'm trying to get to understand that only black women wear this hairstyle, right? And so Kimberly Crenshaw, she, I don't know if people have heard of intersectionality, came up with this theoretical concept that many of us probably have heard about recently. Basically explains that many of us occupy this space where we're not just race or gender, it's like race, gender, class. And so what happens with black women in our hair, the way that we specifically wear our hair, typically black men aren't wearing their hair like that because they wear their hair cut, right? It's gender. And then white women aren't wearing their hair like that because they have their hair straight. So these laws basically discriminate specifically against us. Yeah, so I'm excited about this because, like you said, like the, where is this going to go, what is going to happen, but also the way that we see kind of like retribution for the sisters in the past who basically were told like they did the fight, they didn't win, and look at where we are right now. So I'm excited for that as well. Yeah, and I'm with you about the Dove Act. We can talk later.
Yeah, we will.
I think this. There's another question that I have too, and this leads into it. Why is this such a charged issue? I mean, why are we even discussing hair or black beauty in 2019?
Well, I think it's an issue because it's, it's kind of like we're not assimilating that way anymore. You know what I mean? Because we are the minority, in this country, and for centuries, years, whatever, we've been assimilating to conform to their standards of beauty. And I think now, like, we went through a resurgence like in the 70s where it was like, okay, black is beautiful, we want to wear our natural hair, we want to be different. And I think with the integration of black people into corporate America, we felt like we had to assimilate. We had to wear our hair straight, and we had to be more corporate or whatever, or more accommodating to them. And so now we have this new resurgence where we're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is beautiful to us. We're going to wear our hair the way we want to wear our hair. And I think that's why it's an issue, because it's like we're kind of changing the story of what we think is beautiful.
I just wanted to say, to add to that, I think another thing that really pops up to my mind is the cultural appropriation. I think especially in the whole millennial circle, we're seeing a lot of celebrities and influencers and regular people of different races wearing hairstyles that were normally deemed to be worn by black women. And then people are coming out and saying, I love black women, but I'm going to wear this hairstyle. And there are black women who are being fired, you know, removed from different spaces for wearing the exact same hairstyle. So I think that still puts a charge in people because, you know, we're just like, well, how does this work? How do you think it's okay for you to do this? And when it comes to us, we're, you know, ostracized for doing the same thing.
That's a good point. I also wonder why we feel the need to accommodate someone else's opinion or you know, or ideal. Particularly as black women. I think it relates to the fact that, you know, like even historically, like throughout slavery, it's assumed that we can take it, we can handle it. So if, you know, we can be operated on without an anesthesia, she can handle it, she's strong. You know, she can put that chemical on her hair and burn her scalp and have chemical burns. She can handle it. So I think it's a lot deeper than just, you know, the way that we look, but there's this underlying idea that we need to do something about someone else's discomfort. And I think that that's something that we should all consider, particularly as black women in this discussion. So I'd also like to talk about what possible resolutions are there. What can we do individually, corporately, nationally to change some of these negative perspectives, particularly within our culture, because I believe that's where it starts.
I think it starts with education, just educating our children and then our community about our hair. I mean, I think we've had this, you know, we're having this conversation, and I think there's a lot of resources out there now that basically gives people an idea of what the pros and cons of going natural, of wearing your natural hair as opposed to straightening your hair. It's just healthier, and then there is a way to take care of it, you know, because a lot of people have the perception that, you know, natural hair is really hard to take care of. Is, you know, you got to find the right product, and then you got to go through the twisting or your locks or whatever you're doing with it, and just educating people on how to take care of their hair so they don't feel like it's such, you know, a hard transition.
I think that's the beautiful thing with the videos that came out with so many women emerging with regards to like teaching publicly and sharing the information, because the thing is, we did not know how to take care of our hair, or some of the hairstyles that we associated with natural hair, we kind of made them juvenile, like the idea that this is what you wear when you're a little girl. So I think it is a lot of the instruction, but it's also like having been natural for so long and been like seeing the process over time. So many of us have these testimonies that have heartbreak and trauma related to it. So going natural is also a process where we kind of also have to be there to emotionally support, deal with the self-consciousness that's going to come with it. Because like here in Atlanta, you know, whenever I have a client, you know, someone who's going natural and they're not comfortable, I'm like, oh, just go out. Sisters are going to compliment you, people are going to see, and that's the reinforcement. And I think that's the thing like we can do too, and as well as just kind of recognizing that we're a part of the community and kind of supporting sisters and even brothers too, because they need the same kind of information as well. So I do agree with the education and the support.
And I think also removing some of the consumerism part of natural hair. And what I mean by that specifically is I remember my dad telling me something. He's like, I think you have about as much natural hair products now than when you had relaxed hair. And I had asked other women, I said, has your product stash gone higher or lower since you've gone natural? And it seems to always be higher. And when I look at some of the influences that I've had specifically on YouTube and I'm watching people doing their hair, they're always pushing products. product. And so I'm like, we really need to go back to the education about how do we do our hair. We don't probably need 6 products to do our hair anymore. So we need that education piece. That's very important.
And so, I want to piggyback off of you, because I feel like kind of like when you touched on with the whole Dove thing, is the idea that when Black women, when we initially went natural, the amount of money that was lost from the chemical, the cosmetic market,
Absolutely.
and then also for some of the sisters that were starting the videos and things like that, and they were getting this popularity, like the influencers, and then also how they were approached in terms of making money with regards to promoting particular products and things like that. So I mean, in our society, that's another reason why I think natural hair is popular now. It's like, oh, there's money to be made. And then also, with us not having the knowledge, we are going out spending $50 and $60 on products because, one, we don't know our hair. We think we have to. And then now everyone's kind of in the grab bag of the capitalism of it right now. So I completely agree with you, too.
I know a lot of my friends are natural, but they don't wear their hair natural. So a lot of them, you know, they cut their hair, you know, stop getting the perms. They have their hair cornrows under a stocking cap to put their lace front on. And so they think that they are natural, but they're just wearing protective style. And so I think, and you know, hey, that's for you know. I think for what's important to me is seeing someone else with their hair natural, right? So when they take off their wig, I'm like, your hair is so gorgeous. Like, why don't you just go out looking like that? But they feel as though they're not comfortable yet with that part of themselves. So I think embracing that and telling your friend, your sister, whoever, like, you're beautiful. Like, your hair right now is beautiful. Like, this texture is beautiful. Like, where, you know, and just kind of, you know, showing different styles and how they can wear their hair, because a lot of my friends have stopped getting perms since college, but they still just always have their protective style on. Because I'm like, well, what's the point if you're not going to even show your hair? Like, you're protecting it from what? So I think just being the face and showing that you're comfortable in your natural hair, and other people see that confidence and they want, and you know, just embracing others, I think will help more women to be more comfortable and confident in that as well.
That's good. That's a great point. So I think some of the things that we talked about as resolutions all deal with our connecting and communicating with one another. So the confidence, the education, the changing the attitudes, you know, with consumerism. Like, of course, you know, I have a product. I want you to buy my product, but only if you need it. So I think that's where the sharing comes in. That's where the connecting. And also within legislation, that's going to take us connecting on a larger scale. So, you know, there are 20 of us here in this room. We're having this discussion. Have this same discussion in another group. You know, when you go to church or when you go out with your girlfriends, your line sisters, go share there. Go share at your family reunion and bring this up when everybody's sitting around chatting. Let's have this same discussion so that we can empower, we can encourage one another, and we can have enough weight to band together as the legislation comes, you know, even in the state of Georgia. We want to get involved and be connected with each other so that when, you know, this representative brings the bill, you know, or maybe we'll be the people who call and request the bill to be passed. You know, but we do need to continue this conversation, you know, and take it from this room into our families, our workplaces, and our personal relationships. Definitely. Does anybody have any questions or want to share anything related to our topic?
Just one thing, you all had such positive stories, and I really appreciated hearing them. Hearing that there were positive stories, because I did not have a positive story about for my natural hair care journey. So thank you so much for sharing those positive stories.
I have a question. So what do you think is some of the biggest apprehensions people, I guess women, face when they think about taking their natural styles into a corporate environment? Like, is it the backlash of the coworkers? They think they're going to get asked to cut their hair, or what do you think some of the biggest apprehensions they have in it?
I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and she has beautiful hair, but she never wears it natural. She always straightens it. She puts like clip-ins and whatever. So I was asking her, like, how would you feel if you just had to go to work to, you know, a meeting with just your natural hair out? And she was like, I would never do that because I don't want to make, and like what Jamila was saying, she doesn't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And I was like, how are you making people uncomfortable with your natural hair? Like, how it, she's like, well, I don't want it to look unkept. And I'm like, what do you mean? Wow. She was like, maybe if I did like a little 2-strand twist or something, but she just did not feel comfortable like going there with like her curly natural fro because she's just like, they wouldn't see me as professional and I wouldn't want them to feel uncomfortable. So I'm like, you think they're gonna be uncomfortable because you're a black woman with your natural hair? And she's like, I know that sounds horrible, but that's just what it is. Like, yeah.
Oh, look, I'm so sorry.
No.
I got this all the way from kindergarten. It holds my case in my brain. It holds it. I believe that it's reflective of how initially we were taught to feel about ourselves.
Wow.
And so we don't want to impose that feeling on other people because we're natural. Now, I'm a person that has never worked in corporate America, but I deal with all corporate women. And so they would switch over. So I have one that they have a get in the door hairstyle, and she says, like, I'm gonna bust it out on them as soon as I get my job. So they would get in there and then come with the afro. And the first thing that they say is that word unkept is what I hear a lot of times. And so, but I think it's how we feel about us, and we reflect that and mirror with each other. So the women that are not as secure with their natural hair, they may be secure in a whole lot of other areas, but not secure with their natural hair, the way they feel about you is reflective of how they feel about them.
Exactly.
So that was just my 2 cents.
Somebody hit something.
You said, not a question, just a comment. You said something that really resonated with me. Trauma.
Yes.
Trauma, okay? When I worked with young girls, the first thing that I would hear was there was something wrong with me and with my hair. So, again, that's just another way of keeping the natives in check. Traumatize them. Let them think they're less than, that they're not you. So thank you for that, Professor.
To piggyback off of you, that word unkept, where does that come from?
It's a code word, yeah.
So does that come from the corporate people who are hiring you, or does that come from lineage of grandma?
I mean, that's true. That's true. That is so true. That's where it comes from.
Because you got to remember before, I'm so sorry, look, I don't went all the way in.
No.
Before we begin to segregate and move in together, our goal was to be like them and have what they had. Even our men did not look at us. If your hair wasn't straight, you weren't going to get hollered at, period. You hear me? And so I think that was just, that's how we were raised.
Yes.
We were raised like that. I have a book called Curly Girl Bible that I wrote because of how my babies that I would do growing up, this one particular one, they had a 4.5 GPA and a full ride to Harvard, but was flipping out because her hair wasn't straight. I can't go like this, just traumatized. And so that trauma is real, but it doesn't come necessarily from outside. It's really, like I said, it's from our inside. I remember my mother saying, make those men hold hands in the back of your head. Like, why are they separate? She said, make them hold hands. Why you got these BBs back here? So it's how we talk about ourselves. And then we just push that onto each other because of our own uncomfortability with who we are, what we have, because it was made to be so gross, basically.
And I do want to add too, because I think one of the things that is like also recognizing the term I'm going to use is structure, but it's like it's internal and external, because there are policies and there was consequences. So one of the things with regards to, even if we go to slavery and historically, like even laws where the time that we had to actually do our hair was very limited, the way that our hair was talked about, or even the tools that we had available to do our hair were the same tools that you were using on animals, farm animals. But then fast forward, literally there are even being laws, so like the Tignon law, like when black women were had their hair out, and then they made laws in Louisiana where you had to cover your hair because it was beautiful and hiding our beauty. Hannah Branch wrote a book called Opportunities Denied, where she looked at the ways in which black women were specifically left out of the out of work, but also the way that we were pushed into domestic work. And she found old flyers where they were literally like, so of course white women are hiring, you know, we want someone who is light enough to handle food but not too dark to do such and such, or we don't want someone that's too pretty because they're sedated. So you actually see policies, or also the idea of being very beautiful and rape. You know, black women being the object of rape. So I think, so there's definitely the internal stuff that we have, but there's also this historical structure and institutional systemic racism and sexism that also have informed a lot of the things that it's kind of the intergenerational ways in which we're trying to also protect as well as socialize. And so I think it's a kind of a mixture of both. Like, it's we're being doubly hit.
I think the one fueled the other. I think the one that the external absolutely fueled the internal. So it has to be both, but it was the fuel to the fire that said, oh, I can't go out unless my hair's straight because I'm not going to be accepted. Or, you know, so yeah, 100%.
The young lady in the back.
So I was just going to say, how do we deal with the women in the military? Because they can't wear dreads, they can't wear curls.
Oh no, they've changed that. They changed that. And it was because of the black women, the women from the Black Caucus actually advocated for that.
Oh,
yeah.
But a lot of times they still tell them that they have to tone it down. They can't.
It's because you know the part of it is the equipment, and so the idea that their hair has to either come above a particular, like on their collar, or so that they can get helmets on. And that was the first legislation where we started to see the kind of change. But I will say, I can't remember right now if all branches now, because it was only several branches that basically passed it. But I feel like at one point there was one branch that was still holding out.
Well, I had a very interesting. I actually had a client that had locks, and there's so much widespread ignorance that she wore the locks the entire time, and she just told them that her hair was twisted. She was like, "Oh, my twist! I'll put my twist in a bun."
They were not
dreadlocks.
They didn't know the difference.
They were not know the difference. Wow, that's what they call them, twists.
Yes,
dreadlocks.
Twist. I have one more additional question. So I know we talked about the term, I guess, unkempt. It seemed to be kind of big. Do you find the opposite happening, where a lot of women think that if you're natural, then you literally have to be natural? Don't do anything to your hair?
No grooming.
Is that a thing?
Yes.
There's a thing.
There's a natural hair beast that I had to deal with out in these streets about, you know, if you are, so I broke it down into categories. So you have your relaxer free, you have your chemical free, then you have your organically natural, because you can't tell someone that's transitioned out of relaxer that they're not natural. Even if they never wear their hair out, if they never wear it curly, you better not say it. They'll pass out. And you can't tell someone who has locks with color that she's not natural because she has color. So I just broke it down into categories. But it is a beat, but so that everybody feels their naturalness. Let's just give you something so that you know that you're natural too.
Because if it grows out of your hair,
it's natural.
It's natural. I've had the same situation with my clients, and honestly, it comes from the internal. There is a lot of internal trauma that us hairstylists, and let alone if you have then added some education to it or what have you, but have to deal with, because these ladies, like you said, your babies, but imagine 50-year-olds, you turn them in the mirror and they've never seen their natural hair.
Right.
And then you have converted them or just let them, you know, style their hair and growing out their natural and they don't even want to look in the mirror. So being a stylist for 30 years, experiencing this, you really know the core is inside, because I have all type of clients, corporate, all top of the line, whatever. But the thing is them. Because 9 out of 10 times, wherever you're going to be hired, they're not saying, oh, okay, the military, we hear of certain situations, we know what's happening, but a lot of times it's the internal, your feeling about yourself.
Right.
To say, okay, if I have twists or whatever I'm wearing, maybe, you know, there is a look, but to say that I have to press my hair for this. And I've been doing natural hair since 1995. I've seen judges, all type of people come in, and it's an internal truth. It's how you feel about you, from my experience. And I just think if the narrative, the narrative needs to change with it. Like you said, I'm glad you have your book, but figure out what the issue is.
Feeling that way. It has to be that external does fuel. It fuels it. It does.
And it comes from the culture.
It comes from the
what
culture.
you're taught with your parents.
Absolutely.
That's
Exactly.
conditioned to be around and how they perceive you and how you perceive yourselves in turn from what they've been telling you.
And I think also it's reinforcing what we see in the media. And so working, you know, with I work on Married to Medicine, do some makeup for like Love and Hip Hop and things like that. And the women they will never ever show their natural hair on reality TV. No, never. And so like they'll be fine and they'll operate regularly like outside of television. But a lot of it also are the producers. So the producers are usually, you know, white male, and they want them to have, you know, long hair. I remember one lady was wearing braids. Just braids, and they weren't really excited about her braids for a couple of the scenes. So they're like, well, how long are you gonna wear those braids? Or can you take the braids out and change your hair for the green screen? And then they want their hair to be, your hair can't be too curly in the green screen. You know, we want you to have, you know, it's better if it's straight, because for them it's just like, if it's just straight, then we don't have to do too much editing. And so a lot of it's, you know, we see that a lot in reality. Have you ever seen anybody other than maybe Black Ink where you had someone with locks on a reality TV show, or just their natural hair?
Or regular TV.
Or regular TV.
Because even if, you know, working on sets, even if that's the case, they have to come with their hair already done.
Right.
You know, a lot of times you're not going to have a stylist on deck that's going to be able to do your natural hair. If it's not a wig, not to cut you off.
No. Yeah, you're right.
You know, that's the issue. So I just want to say, get your license. Get on set.
Right. And even but these women still have stylists on set, but they're told that you have to, like, they all have like 5 wigs just ready to put on.
Stand up, bro. I just think if
you won't get the part, baby.
Only
because they won't stand up and they don't have enough gall to say,
and it's not
I'm
even
the trailblazer. I'm gonna be the change.
But it's not even that though. It's not even they don't have they don't want to. They're not really fighting against it.
That's what you just see.
They're not really fighting against it, and they're just like, well, you know, I'm getting this check, so if they want to pay me this amount of money, then, you know, I'll do it.
And I agree with you, because you think about what's Issa Rae's show?
Insecure.
Yeah. So she has a Black stylist on the set, and you know, she advocates and people wear their natural hair on that. But I think because she's in charge.
The next season, you saw more weave on her natural hair. The first season Issa Rae came out, she came out like she was. And as I watched her show, her hair has grown, and she had very few scenes with just her hair now. It changed. The first year it did, and I loved it. Oh wow, she's really taking that edge. But the next season, I'm telling you, just check it out. She became more extensions in her hair and less of her natural hairstyles.
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you a question.
Even now.
How do you get the brothers, men, to be advocates for you all? You say you all stand up, but also y'all need that support. So what is going to change the psychology when you have in male-dominated areas like the military and certain corporate settings where certain brothers at certain income levels encounter Black women who may be at those other levels, who may not be natural? But we had a discussion a little bit before this panel about, I think, you know, sisters are more sexy with their natural hair. So in your personal relationships, the professional relationships, Well, how do you think you all can make men be more advocates for you all? Because they will the limit too.
Well, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of the younger black men wearing their natural hair than I am seeing older. Like when I see some of the high schoolers, especially the boys, they're wearing their hair more out than ever before than I've seen. I don't see a lot of black men wearing their hair in their natural state. But I will say on the flip side, and this kind of goes back to the inner, I've also heard a lot of black men talk about the texture of a black woman's hair. You know, determine that a woman with looser curl pattern or what have you is more desirable than a woman with a tighter curl pattern. So I think it's yeah, I've seen and I've heard of that. And so I think it goes back to the inner, you know, not just as black women, but black men need to do some inner findings for themselves to discover why this is still occurring. So I don't have an answer.
You know, and it's the media. You know, the media, the standard of beauty is, you know, lighter skin with straight hair. And it's always been that way, you know, since I can remember. So it's like you have like the videos, you know, you had Hype Williams, you know, you had a certain type. So I think that if you're a child and you grow up, you see a certain type of women and they have long, loose, curly hair, that's what you think is beautiful and that's what you're going to like.
And I think there's a misconception for some black men what natural hair looks like. And so they think like natural hair, because a lot of my clients will come to me and they're like, you know, my husband doesn't like a lot of makeup and he likes me to wear my natural hair, but he doesn't really know what my natural hair looks like. So he's thinking, but he likes it because he's thinking the natural hair is going to be these like, you know, softer, I guess,
curls,
you know, looser curls,
straight.
And he doesn't know that was actually a sew-in. But right, exactly. So it's like, you know, I hear a lot of black men saying, I love natural hair, but I'm like, do you really know what my natural hair looks like and what it is? And so like, people are like, oh, I love your locks. Yes, but you didn't like them when they was up here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So appreciating like every point of the natural hair journey, every type of natural hair, and saying that's beautiful and embracing that, I think that can go a long way.
Whether y'all know it or not, there's an ongoing conversation in bars, just intimate settings with men. They're saying they're talking about the fakeness of women.
Yes,
and
now
it also starts, it deals with the physical appearance, the attitudes, a lot of things, but before they even get to talk to you, what they're going to see from a distance is your image.
Right.
And it starts, you know, with that image, and they're saying, hey, I'm tired of all this fakeness now, and it's really a deep conversation.
I have a question. So I have conversations with clients all the time about that, and the comments are that they really don't understand what fake is. Like, their definition of fake is like so extreme that even the chicks that y'all think are real and natural, they not have like the glammed up face completely, but they got on makeup. They not looking like they do when you wake up in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you guys is. Yeah, but you guys, or they may just have on more natural looking makeup, but it's not a bare face.
Right.
I work in the university setting, and we had a sister who was very much an advocate for black males getting jobs, and she would speak out, and she would make herself up sometimes. But I noticed this, and I told the women and the men. She came to work one day, and y'all remember them when they used to get on the country porches and plait your hair in the big squares?
Miss Stevens.
Big, some white people call pickaninny. She came to work like that with no makeup and that, and the men, the attention she got all day from the men was extraordinary.
That's interesting. How long ago was that?
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
Probably about 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Really?
Interesting. Okay. I wonder too if it has to do with the image of the mother figure being inside, and so a lot of times, this is from what I hear from men as well, we don't want to be intimate with our mother, and so the fantasy of it was what they saw outside. And so then that was that piece. What do you think? I'm just from a male perspective. What do you think about that? So they see us as the indoor woman, or the woman that is closest to how your mom and your grandmother and your aunts, all the women in your family that are family members, as opposed to someone that you are fantasizing about or want to be with in a different aspect.
I don't know if I
I'm
totally
looking at the
understand
babies,
it, but and I can't speak for all, but maybe it's the thing of that woman who nurtured them, that gave them biscuits.
Yes. They don't want to take her to the dance.
They didn't have that media image.
Yes.
And that yearning subconsciously
gotcha.
is going back to, that's why I said both of us, men and women, psychologically,
Yes.
we're going to have to do some work on ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
And how we relate to each other. We can win, y'all.
I believe it.
Sometimes you got to capture that frequency.
Yeah, question, like, when Dominique was talking about the individuals that you work with on these different reality shows and how they, you know, they're in for the money, so they're gonna put that wig on, they're gonna put. So how do we ever get those images changed in the media? We got people in the media has an opportunity and a platform to be the change maker, but they don't make the change. That's why we continue
finding the right person.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, how do you get to someone who has a platform to be a change maker, and we're not able to help them to see, or they're not willing for whatever reason, they don't know. Maybe, like I said, everybody's like, I'm not the role model. I'm not the one to be the role model. I'm not the one to be Colin Kaepernick. Okay, I'm just here to get my paycheck.
Right.
But at the same time, they have a platform that can make a difference in those images that our daughters are seeing. But they're not feeling that that's their job.
Yeah, and a lot, and then there's just a lot going on. So a lot of the women, you know, are very, you know, feisty against each other. And so if one person hair is just out of place, they're gonna talk about that person. So it's just like there's so many different challenges already. So, and they want to be the best looking person, because as soon as you're off your game by just an eyelash or a piece of hair, a curl, you are getting and talked about. And that's even on social media. They dog these women so bad on social media because
So if I would get dogged, let me come in with my locks.
Well, I would.
I'm just saying.
I most definitely would.
Let me be the game changer.
I definitely would, but they get, I mean, they're really, even though they come off as these, you know, very strong alpha males, they're very sensitive to these comments. Yes. I'm sorry, alpha females. I meant alpha females. They are very sensitive to these comments, and so I don't know.
So just to kind of take that one step further, say if you had a celebrity such as like Michelle Obama or Beyonce convert to natural, what kind of impact do you think that would have on women converting and making being a little bit more?
Convert and stay there, not just for the photo.
Yeah.
Right.
In the corporate environment. Do you think that'll have a change?
Most definitely. I think it would, especially Beyonce came out with a short, natural, you know, hair.
I think it's only good. It's going to take one person. And getting to that person, I'm saying it's going to happen one conversation, one encounter at a time. You know, just even from personal experience, I'll have clients that would come to me for 8 years, and you know, they were diehard straightening. They got their hair straightened every time. And it might not have been until year 4 or 5 where I could say, hey, well, let's try this twist out. So it was a slow transition. So they went from straight to a textured style. You know, then they had a protective style where they actually walked outside with their hair close to their scalp. But it was a slow walk. But, you know, I know that I'm the influencer. So my goal is to get this woman to feel comfortable with the hair that grows out of her scalp, even when it's standing on end. So she might come in getting straightened, and I'll go with that for a year or two, but eventually we're going to try something else. So just try a little bit of something. So maybe then, you know, maybe that she'll have a wavy weave. Then she'll have a ringlet weave. And then she'll have a short bob weave. You know, so it's going to take slow steps. But I think we, you know, especially as stylists or, you know, even as a makeup artist, you're the influencer, so every conversation you have is planting a seed, and that's where we're going to see the change. And eventually, one of them is going to be like, "Today's the day," and it's going to happen. It's going to happen in front of everybody on media, all over social media, and then it'll be the new thing. But it's going to happen.
And I think a lot of women are embracing their natural hair, and I don't know if I'm just surround myself with those type of women, but I'm seeing it just like in my, you know, IG stories, and you know, more people are just, you know, finding their natural curl and being proud of it. I just recently had a client this morning who she was going through chemo, and so she lost a lot of her hair, and she was doing a photo shoot just to, you know, embrace this new lifestyle that she has now. And so she said her hair's growing back now, and she has a nice little mini fro, and she was like, I never wore my natural hair out. She was like, I've always had it, you know, I always had it straightened, or, you know, had a weave. And she's like, I feel, you can tell when she was sitting out, she felt uncomfortable at first. But I was trying to just encourage her and tell how beautiful it looked, how beautiful she was, and how, you know, just embrace every, you know, take a picture now and take a picture like a couple months later and see the growth. And just even that was, you know, warming her up to the idea. Even though she was forced into it, she was just like, she was embracing it. And she's just realizing like how beautiful she is even with her natural hair, you know. So
and I want to piggyback on you because you touched on something. I think the other thing is the idea of like the health, and now that there's a lifestyle that's being associated with it.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like, what's our point of entry into going natural? And so like you said, like as the influencers, we can kind of introduce it to them. But I think the other thing is we're seeing this health consciousness like in our community as well. So I think that's one of the other things as well.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to say something. What do you guys think about Tracy Ellis Ross, her product? I mean, she's a platform.
I just think that she's been a good. She's a positive influence.
She said that she went through that stage, you know, trying to wear hair this way and that way, and you know, wanting it straight.
But for most of us, I mean, even having hair like hers is unrealistic.
I was about to say that.
But thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
I think she can, you know.
Right.
And she has like a lot of different hair types in her ads and things like that. But you know, she does have her hair type is a little different than most black women's hair. So and hers are beautiful. Yes.
And then I agree with what you say. It's one person at a time, one TV show at a time. Sometimes I think everything is not for everybody. And if that was the case, then we would just be all you know, the world wouldn't be the world. So one person at a time. Issa Rae, she may have extensions, but she's still representing texture. She's still representing like her whole cast. It represents the whole diversity of women of color. So I think there's something to say with that, because a lot of women do have their hair natural that are wearing protective styles, and who's to say? You know, like who's to say that we don't have the diversity, or we don't have the option to change? Like I change shoes. So I say that with my clients. So it's serious because it is health, but
I would just add media, the way to make it change for us, we have to own our own. We have to employ our own and embrace our own. Because although you may have this one person on the show stand up, they will replace you. Because there's going to be 10 others who will take that chair. So until you start getting the people, the kids who want to grow up and be TV producers and network owners and employ the people who look like them and wear their hair like them, then
you're right.
It doesn't change.
That's great.
And when you also get to the point where you can get Caucasians to support it, because unfortunately in America it doesn't change until you have them support us and realize it is beautiful. I get more reactions from my Caucasian peers at work about my hair and how beautiful it is, or even I was encouraged by somebody who's Caucasian to go natural before I was by somebody who looked like me on my job, in my friend group. And so